Okay, sorry about that. We had a little bit of a technical glitch there. Hopefully, everybody can see us here once again. Fortunately, it happened right as we were transitioning
Yeah.
between questions. So we're just going to go ahead and just start that question over again. We'll give it another try. I couldn't talk when we were doing that one anyway, so
Yeah.
we'll go ahead and give it another try, and hopefully everybody can get back in here. I'm getting... okay, good. I did just get confirmation that we are back, so excellent. All right.
Nice.
Let's go back into this question. It came from DGP, who asked, will more minor glyphs come out for Demon Hunters during Legion, such as a glyph to always show Demon Hunter wings?
Mm-hmm. This feels more of a question of, like, is there going to be a glyph to show Demon Hunter wings?
It does kind of feel like that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, the same thing with the flying is, like, I don't... Well, we don't think that that's necessarily looks that great to have the wings out all the time. Because they don't necessarily work with all the animations very well. And it's just they're supposed to be, they're not really part of your person. They're this thing that just sprouts out when you need it in the this time of dire need,
Yeah.
generally when you're falling to your death or whatever, or you need to get across a fence. But that is, again, I would say tentatively no, with more exploration to come.
Okay.
I just don't like ever saying never, because
right, yeah.
I've seen a
you
lot
can
change over 10 years.
Yeah, exactly.
11 years.
Yeah, but like I can definitely see sort of the point of it may not look as good as we initially think it might. Because like if you're thinking about your character just standing there with the wings sprouted, like that feels cool. But if you're talking about your character like doing some of the spinning around glaive moves and these wings are just kind of doing a spin at the same time, or even just the run animation for a couple of them. Like I know the Night Elf male, he gets a lot of shoulder action when he runs, and his wings just flopping back and forth the entire time. That can look a little bit weird. So I can definitely see that angle of it as well. Let's move on. Next question from Rishman. Wow. Again, hopefully everybody was able to get back in after we had that little bit of a disconnect there. But getting back into this question from Rishman Wow, who asked, did giving Demon Hunters double jump make you worry about them breaking some bosses or my ability to talk?
Well, it definitely did that.
Yeah, definitely broke my ability to talk. Yeah. But yeah, double jump, the ability to get very high in the air, obviously. Is that gonna break some stuff?
That basically made us worry about breaking everything.
Oh.
But
not just bosses, like
but not
everything.
Not as much on bosses as you would think.
Okay.
Because, we knew we were doing it pretty early, so we started evaluating that. I think more so it's gonna get you into places that we never intended you to be. But we can deal with those as they come up and handle that. But yeah, there's definitely a worry about some interesting interactions that are going to be there with double jump and glide and fell rush being an air dash and vengeful retreat.
Yeah, and like I know I've seen a lot of people worried about like, well, the Demon Hunters will be able to skip trash in instances and stuff. But at the same time, like Shroud of Concealment has been in the game for a long time.
True. And there's no Demon Hunter healer. I guess you could have a druid. So yeah. Well,
yeah. TBD. I mean, Mythic Keystone Dungeons.
Figure it out.
Yeah, go for it. See what you can do. Question from David M. Toll, who asked, is the level 70 requirement account-based or only server-based? So obviously there's a requirement that you have a level 70 character in order to create a Demon Hunter. Is that only on that? So you have to have one on that server, or is that across your entire account? It's on that
it has
server.
To be any server you want to create a Demon Hunter on. You have to have a level 70 character.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to have that guy there already. It's kind of like what the Death Knight was at first as well, and that restriction wasn't lifted until level 55. Kind of wasn't that big of a deal anymore.
Yeah. So maybe in the far distant future.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We're like talking level 200 is the cap or something. Sure. Like we've transcended beyond levels, and it's now okay. You have to be level purple.
Yeah. Or blue.
Yeah. We've gone beyond the use of numbers. All right. Question here from Kinley, who asked, why would Demon Hunters have only 2 specs, and will we see them have a 3rd range spec?
Okay. Well, okay, so they have 2 specs because when we discussed all the options, which of course included a range spec choice, and maybe I think we half jokingly talked about healing.
Demon healer.
Yeah, with glaives,
It's like a warlock just throwing hellstones at people constantly. Yeah.
But ultimately we said if let's look at another class that does have 3 specs. Is there a way that we could have taken 2 of those specs and put them together and just made one much cooler spec? And that just kind of answered the question for us. And they've just been traditionally melee, and
right, yeah.
It just really fit with the lore and allowed us to focus on those specs a lot more.
Yeah, like a demon hunter. If you think about, like, I like to make this joke. If you want to play a demon hunter, but you want to, I've actually seen this request where someone was like, I want to play a demon hunter, but you should make it so that they can wear mail, and you should make it so that they can use guns. And it's okay if you don't go as far into the demon aspect of things to make this happen.
Right.
And that's like, okay, hunters exist.
Yeah.
You could play just a regular hunter. You don't have to specifically hunt demons. But yeah, no, I guess the other side of that too is like the idea of if Havoc, instead of Havoc, we had 2 DPS specs, you'd kind of have to take stuff from Havoc
definitely.
and split that out.
Like if we had a range spec, I-beam would probably be over there.
Right, yeah.
Or,
so then Havoc would not
or
have
even
it.
throw Glaive or something. Yeah. It's just like, it was easier. I mean, those aren't perfect examples, but I-beam maybe being the better one, because we were allowed to give them a little bit of that, that 20-yard range on more abilities, because...
kind of mix it up a bit. Cool. All right, let's move on. Next question here from Fat Rolled. This is a really, really broad question. Who asked, in terms of Demon Hunter, what's the process for designing core abilities and the rest of a moveset, such as major cooldowns? So obviously, like, World of Warcraft, been around for a little while at this point. I think we're coming up on 12 years here pretty soon.
Yep.
And that's just the live game, let alone like the time that it spent in beta prior to launch and so on. And we're now talking about dropping a brand new class into the existing game.
Well, and
how do you approach that?
Well, that's it's not there's tons of classes to look at for a template, if you were. So we can start there. We can say, all right, we've got to have our builders and spenders that's after you determine the resource and all that.
Right. Yeah. But even that is something that you kind of look at.
And sometimes that even changes during that. So you start with that, and then you kind of do like a big brainstorm, and you just come up with the craziest ideas, and you start trying to figure out how you can take crazy idea and move it into actual gameplay. And then...
I can imagine there was at some point, like early on, where someone was like, what if we let them have double jump? And then everybody in the room went, oh, that'd break everything. And then you were like... But what if? And you just start thinking about it.
Yeah, in fact, it was it kind of was on the cutting table there for a bit, we made sure it lived.
Nice.
And let's hope we don't regret that.
Yeah.
But it's that was also one of those abilities of like, why are you doing that? And it's just like, well, it feels cool. Yeah. And it's fun.
And a lot of it too, like the questions asking about like major cooldowns, like Metamorphosis.
Oh, yeah.
That's like the obvious, like this feels Demon Hunter. Like, so if you have a Demon Hunter that doesn't have Metamorphosis, it's like, who designed this? Like, this should definitely be there.
And we looked at every Demon Hunter. We looked at the Heroes Demon Hunter. We looked at the War 3 Demon Hunter, and just everywhere we could find anything. We looked at Illidan. I mean, that's where I-beam came from. I remember Chris going, what if they had like I-beam, and we kind of laughed. We're like, what, lasers coming out of their eyes? Nobody does that. And it ended up being pretty awesome.
Cool. All right, let's move on. Next question here from Rain, aka Ludwig, on Twitter, who asked, will the Demon Hunters have a skill gap that distinguishes the casual from the hardcore? So I think what this question is asking is the idea of... So obviously with any class, you have the people that are kind of on the casual end. Maybe they're either not taking it super seriously, which is fine. Maybe they just haven't learned it very well yet. And then you have the people who have devoted like hours and hours and hours to, I'm going to be the very best, like no one ever was at this Demon Hunter. And sometimes in the past, the gap between the two has been relatively close. And sometimes in the past, like I'm thinking back to like Wrath of the Lich King, John Madden, Feral Druids.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like, if you're bad at Feral Druid, you're really bad at Feral Druid. But if you're good at Feral Druid, you're really good at Feral Druid back in those days. And obviously that gap can cause problems. So where do we feel that Demon Hunter is going to land here?
Well, I mean, because they are a simpler class, they are probably going to end up on the the shorter spectrum where you can get closer. But I mean, hardcore players go to all kinds of lengths to eke out a little bit of DPS, and also depending on how much that movement abilities stay in as a crucial part of the DPS and are not cancelable, will factor a lot too, because that takes a lot of skill.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a skill gap regardless of there's nothing we could do to prevent it, because there's just some players that are much more dedicated.
You think about like if we're talking about like a raid encounter, and this happens in PvP to some extent as well, but mobility is something that it's really hard to absolutely 100% nail in raiding, because you have to be able to predict where you need to be next sometimes. So you'll see the good demon hunter who is like, when that ad spawns, they're already there. They're immediately killing it, and then they're already back to the boss and working on the boss again. Whereas the less skilled, we'll say, demon hunter is maybe like, oh, an ad's up. I gotta get over there, but I already used Fell Rush to move around for some reason, so I don't have that available. So now you see the demon hunter who's just walking across with his glaives out, like, guys, wait for me.
Yep.
So that's one of the. I think mobility is going to be a huge part of this, especially in raid encounters.
Yeah, for exactly that purpose.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Next question from Salty Bob. Who asked a slightly, actually not that very salty question, but we'll go ahead and read it off.
A little bit.
Little salt. Just tiny, there's a hint of salt here. Who asked, currently the soul barrier talent for Vengeance feels clunky and slow. Would it be possible to take it off of the global cooldown?
Bob using that magic clunky word to attack that ability.
Everyone hates clunky things.
Yeah. I looked at the ability again this morning, and Soul Barrier is basically like a better version of Soul Cleave.
Right.
And in fact, so when you Soul Cleave, your heals don't really happen. A lot of the heals doesn't happen until your orbs get to you, and there's a little bit of travel time. Where this applies a barrier, I guess there is an instant heal. So they are kind of similar. Sorry. Taking it off the GCD is just, it's an easy solution, but it's not one that we like to use lightly.
Okay.
So considering that, we'll look at other ways if that's a large scale consensus that it's like, oh, this button is just awful. I hate pressing it.
Right.
So
yeah, a lot of it too is just like we've said a couple times, like just throwing stuff out there and seeing how things work out in practice. A lot of times in the past, we've seen those clunky and slow talents actually end up being really good.
Yeah.
Even if the way that you use them feels weird, like they're still really good. So then doing something like taking the global cooldown off of it is a buff to a talent that everybody's already taking anyway.
Right.
So then you're kind of like, okay, should we really actually make this better, or do we need to fix this in some other way? Do we need to nerf this so that then people don't feel like they have to take it? And then, like there's lots of different directions.
A lot of variables that we can tweak on that particular ability, or a lot of abilities to make them feel better, more responsive.
Nice. Next question here from John B. Bond. Be good.
All right.
This question is, Blood Elf glaive sizes are way smaller than Night Elf. Any plans to change that? Love the bigger models.
Don't we all? Well, the Blood Elf glaive, it looks big in their hand. I mean, their size. I don't even know how to answer this.
Okay. Big weapons look cool. Smaller weapons, if you're like, okay, how much damage can you do with something? You kind of feel like the bigger weapon's going to do more damage.
It's not the size, though. It's how you use it. All right. Okay.
I give up on this question. We're going to go ahead and move on. Now, I know this is a question that a lot of people have been asking.
Okay.
Legitimately this time. It's not another Garrison question. A lot of people have been asking this one. A lot of people want to know what is the answer to when will they be playable? And, of course, Drainy Brit asked this question. I should call that out as well.
Okay. Well, thank you, Drainy.
Yeah.
Brit.
When are we going to get our hands on them Demon Hunters?
Oh, I don't know. I think when they're ready. Yeah.
Okay.
Which I believe is August 9th. Oh, God. Was I supposed to say that?
I don't know.
Tell me I was supposed to say that.
We're live, man. I can't edit that.
But there you go. August 9th. Coming
Excellent.
to a WoW server near you.
Yeah, so it's going to be. I was actually checking up on this before. It's going to be with maintenance in regions the week of August 9th. So I believe that ends up being like really early on August 10th in Europe. And other regions it may end up being a little bit different. North America, it's going to be August 9th. And that's with the Demon Invasions event as well.
Yep. So make your demon hunter, hunt
Excellent.
some demons.
Nice. And those things are obviously very closely tied together. So that's why they're kind of coming at the same time.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's all the time that we have here today. I know we gotta get out of here in kind of a hurry here. So thank you so much for coming on and answering questions and talking with us about the Demon Hunter. Again, apologies for that little technical glitch we had earlier on in the broadcast. Hopefully everybody made it back in okay. I can't actually tell right now, so maybe we've been talking to ourselves for a while, but hopefully we're actually good. Time. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, August 9th in NA. I believe it's technically very early August 10th. It's going to be with weekly maintenance in Europe. And yeah, so next Q&A is going to be shortly after launch. So it's going to be a little bit while for the next Q&A that we do actually here in the studio, but there is a lot of other stuff coming up very soon. Obviously, August 9th, we're going to have that Demon Invasion and the Demon Hunter open up, as well as there's some stuff going on at Gamescom that people are definitely going to want to try and keep an eye out for. Yeah. So keep an eye on that. And then we will be back here shortly after launch to ask some, first week or so. We don't have an exact date set yet, but first week or so, okay, expansion's out. How's everybody feeling now that Legion's available? Now that everybody's able to get in there and play it, we'll come back here and we'll answer some of your questions then. But again, thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us, and we will see you guys next time.